Yo, what's going on? My name's Andrew. You can call me Pooch, and I'd like to welcome you to the Less Lonely channel. Me, personally, am really glad that you're here. If you're new to the channel, let me catch you up to speed really quick. This past year, I partnered with the coffee company CXFFEEBLACK to help direct and edit their very first documentary. The documentary is called Coffee Black to Africa, and it was an amazing experience. I loved partnering with Bart and Renata, the owners and the producers of this project. And so today I wanted to break down 5 things that I learned while making this documentary. But here's the thing, we're doing this a little differently. Instead of me just telling you the things that I learned, I wanted to bring in one of the producers. Bart came into the studio last week and we were able just to really chop it up in like a almost podcast style. It's not a podcast. I thought having Bart's perspective in on this video was going to be incredibly important to help really show you guys everything I learned from being a director and editor, but also from the producer side of things and the creative side of things. So without further ado, here are 5 things that I learned, or we learned, while making a documentary. What up, y'all? Got Bart here, dear friend who just got back from Africa. What's up, man?
Yes, sir. Man, I'm good, bro. It's I missed Memphis, but now I just want to put Memphis in Africa. Like that's outside of the one in Egypt. Like I just want to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we do have a pyramid.
Yeah.
We do
have a Bass Pro pyramid, so that's basically
yes.
Right?
But here's the thing: we're gonna do the shorter version here on the Less Lonely channel. But if you guys want to see the full uncut version, go over to Casa Creative Club, my new studio and business. All the content's gonna be there. It's gonna be uncut, raw.
Ooh.
You're gonna hear all the bloopers.
Spicy. I like that.
Yeah. The very first thing that I learned while making a documentary was that organization is key. I know you were just making fun of me for my organization.
No, I admire it, bro. I think it's so good to see how organized you are.
I need to organize things for my brain. The way that it works, there's a million ideas, and what I realize is that I actually have to get everything down on paper before I can even move forward. And so, while making this documentary, I learned literally how important organization was, because we had hard drives upon hard drives. We had hours of interview footage. We had buckets of audio tracks that didn't have like labels on them. Yeah. And that was so challenging. So as an editor, I came in and I had to like have a mini panic attack, gather myself, and then realize, okay, folders upon folders upon folders. But I'm curious, man, so like while you were filming in Ethiopia, like how was your experience like trying to organize your teams, yourself, and actually like when you got there, how did you organize everyone who was involved in the film?
Yeah, I think the organizational piece was kind of story built. So we had 3 to 4 questions, and I tried to simplify it down to 3 to 4 questions with 2 possibles. And then we just asked everybody the same question. In my head, the documentary would be multiple people answering the same questions, and you would kind of generate your story from the relationship and the differences of their answers. Another thing I want to say about organization is just like mental health is really important. So you mentioned having an anxiety attack, and there were so many things that went wrong that we never talked about publicly on the last trip and on this trip. Yeah. And I realized like it was starting to trigger my anxiety, which actually took away from my ability to be organized, because I was so like, the weird thing about anxiety is you start questioning all your decisions. And so even if you make decisions at the front to be organized, if you're having an anxiety attack, you're going to veer away from everything and almost do the exact opposite of what you planned because you're afraid that your plan wasn't correct.
The boundaries of organization create the opportunities to create freely as you go.
And I think for us, having someone like you who had the experience to come on, I think was really a benefit for us, because, we're in the moment, we're creatives, but the actual craft of putting together the story, and I remember seeing you with your notebooks and stuff, like all of that is so crucial to like us being able to execute this vision.
All right, so the second thing that I learned while making a documentary was just how obviously and clearly important it is to have a cohesive story. Now, I know that sounds really simplistic, like, of course you need a story, but hear me out, right? You can have the greatest visuals, you have the greatest crew, the best gear, you can have the most like amazing action sequences, but if your story is non-existent, or if your story is not cohesive or does not make sense, no one's watching. They're watching the first 5 minutes and then they're out. So I'm curious, because I know that we had some interesting choices with story that we had to make.
Yeah, man.
So I'm curious to know, like, how did we choose the story? Like, how did we land on this single story for the first documentary?
I think the most important part is telling the truth. Like, I think that as creatives, we rely on imagination a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it was more about observation than imagination. Like, it was more about just looking at, you have this intent, this desire, this plan that you organized.
Yeah.
But once you finish doing all that, you have to kind of clear that out of your mind and just look at what's actually there. Because sometimes the story that you shot and the story you experience is not the same story that you planned.
I think the beautiful thing that you're sharing is the idea that, like, and it kind of goes in hand with the organization piece, where you find an initial story that you want to tell, and then you find the beauty and the magic of human experiences, right? As a documentary filmmaker, you go, this is where you roll with the punches. This is where you go, my schedule's great, but this is a special moment. Yeah. And when we were looking at choosing the story and the through line and the arcs, act 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, as I was processing that, I started to realize that there was a lot of things that we'd have to put on the chopping block. And like, we had conversations, like hour-long stuff, like, hey, like, does this stay? Can we make it fit? And unfortunately,
I tried to make everything fit.
Like, we ended up actually having to like chop some really beautiful moments, and we had to say to ourselves, for this story specifically, not yet. That story, soon, one day. But this story specifically, it turned into something so beautiful. And so there is a level of sacrifice as you're making a film to go, yes, you have this magical moment, or yes, you have this structured plan, but maybe you have to sacrifice it to fit the overall plan and the journey that the documentary is bringing you on. The third thing that I learned while making a documentary was that while gear is incredibly important, it is not necessarily essential. And here's why. So Bart just said that people were like, wow, this was so beautiful. I remember specifically, there was a moment where someone walked up to me. We were in North Carolina, my hometown, Raleigh, what's up? And someone said, hey, the shots of Bart on the farm, man, like, depth of field was great, cinematic quality. And first off, I actually wasn't even there. I actually didn't get to go and shoot in Africa. I was like, oh, thank you. And I didn't have the heart to tell him. But Bart shot that junt on an iPhone 13. And so I just want to say, like, I know...
I'm dead. They really said that?
We get so obsessed with gear. And as filmmakers, I think that a lot of times too, like, I can't do the thing because I don't have the tool. I don't have the thing that I need to make it look amazing. I don't have the thing I need to make it look epic, or to tell the beautiful story or show the beautiful visuals. Has gear affected the viewer's experience at all? And if so, or if not, why?
No, it hasn't. And I think as we get accepted into more film festivals, it's becoming more and more apparent that being a hip hop based filmmaker is actually an asset and not a liability. I really think that, like, the lack of gear and just the grassroots nature of the piece, the sample based nature of the piece, created a more emotional, more human, and somehow more universal feel to the text, because parts of it feel like you're watching a PBS documentary because of the graininess. Parts of it feel like a personal story because it's me and my camera vlogging. Parts of it feel like a cinematic experience because you're sitting down with high quality cameras, and parts of it feel like you're watching the History Channel because there's archival text and images, and it feels almost like a fashion piece. And there is some sick gear. Like, there's super gear. We got film cameras. We got the really dope cinematic piece that we sat down with. We got like professionally mixed soundtracks. And there's a lot of cool stuff, but I feel like those are accents around the real experience,
which is very different from what you would say that all of those would be the core, and then you might throw in some vlog-esque footage to make it feel natural. The fourth thing that I learned while making a documentary is, but what about after it's made?
Yeah,
that's when things get really challenging, because you know what, you got to do something with it. And so I'm curious, man, and this is gonna be, I really want you to just kind of plug, what is it really like on the back end after you've hit the export button?
Yeah, man, the experience after hitting the export button is crazy. Like, I think that's where you really are tested at how much you believe in the story you chose to tell, because you have to start presenting it to people and organizations and individuals who have the capacity to put that story on a platform where it can have maximum impact. And I think there are a lot of moments where you question, like, yo, should I just put this thing out on YouTube and just move on? But we really believe that this has the ability to create like life-changing impact. And so we've spent the last 3 months touring this documentary about the Black history of coffee and our experience learning about it in different Black communities and cities across the country and across the globe. So we've been to Nashville, of course, Memphis, Boston, Atlanta, Charlotte, Houston, Raleigh, and Kigali and Agaro, Kigali in Rwanda, Agaro in Ethiopia, Jimma in Ethiopia, Guji in Ethiopia, and being able to have this experience, taking it to so many different places. We're in our first film festival a couple of weeks ago. We got another film festival in Richmond, Virginia coming up. We have tour dates in New York coming up, and Cali, and Toronto, and Costa Rica, and like there's so many things coming up. It's almost like showing this documentary has kind of become like a revival tour. Like even the old preachers in the 1800s, they would like travel around and have these like tent revivals.
Yeah, put
like,
the tent up.
I think it's created almost like a determination for me not to let that value go, and not to just put it somewhere to collect dust on my channel or whatever, but to like really do the work to start putting pitch decks together, to start putting into film festivals, to start talking to high net worth individuals, which has been a pitch. Like we've really pitched traditionally to organizations in coffee that we think would support the work. Because if you make the pivot from networks to individuals, individuals have way more freedom in how they spend their income.
Correct.
Whereas when you're working with an entity, you're really just asking them to see it as marketing.
The fifth thing for today that I learned while making a documentary is about trusting your team, trusting the people around you. This documentary was not self-made. This documentary was made by a lot of people. And so I'm curious, what was it like for you having others essentially help bring your vision to life?
Man, I think it was humbling. It was affirming, and it was really transformative, because having a vision that you believe is supposed to help others is one thing, but having those same people come back and tell you that they believe in your vision, and because of that, they believe in the value of what you're doing, is really the part where it starts to be concrete. Like, oh, this is my purpose. Like, this is a part of my lifelong work, because doing work to affirm others and have that same work come back and affirm yourself, I think there's not a lot of things that bring you more happiness. And I think like the thing you have to fight against as like any creative, you're fighting against like comparison, social media, looking at other people who are doing something in a similar lane and wanting to compare your progress. But like when you really step back and look, especially from a piece like what we've done, I don't know if everybody has had that experience, but the amount of global support, both locally, nationally, internationally, for the things we're doing, from people from so many different communities and people from so many different histories, to say like, this is valuable, it's important, and this should exist. It makes me happy, bro. So learning how to trust correctly to me is really impactful, and it helped me to realize like more than anything else, what matters the most are shared values. You can try to skip to the teamwork and the trust, and it's going to fall apart because you can't be on the same team if you're not wearing the same uniform. You know what I mean?
Bars.
Yeah.
That's great. So there you have it. There's 5 things that I learned while making a documentary. Quick shout out to Bart and Renata. Sorry that Renata wasn't able to join us. We'll get you in the next one. It's my hope that this video would help anyone who's an aspiring filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, or even just an aspiring content creator. If you're curious about the uncut version and all the other little details that we shared, please go over and check out the YouTube channel, Casa Creative Club. It's down below here, where the full uncut version of this interview is going to live. Other than that, I just want to say thank you for helping me feel less lonely. If you want to feel less lonely on your creative journey, then I recommend you leave a like, drop a comment, and ultimately subscribe so we can be creative together and feel less lonely. And with that, I'm out of here. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace. Anything else you want to tell the folks? Drink your coffee black. All right.
Yeah.
Peace.
That's good, bro.
That's cut right there.
Yeah, man.
Let's go, dog. Woo. How'd that feel?